Good day, good day. Thank you for tuning in to the Informal War Zone, episode 12. Today is Thursday, October 1st, 2020, in the year of our Lord, or if you're going by the Hebrew calendar, 5781. So I have these reports that I've been working on, trying to keep up with time, but as you guys are well aware of, that news is moving literally at warp speed, pun intended. Today I want to go over an article that was released about over 2 weeks ago from the Gateway Pundit. It was from Joe Hoft, September 13th, 2020. And it says, "Time for an investigation. Dr. Fauci and the NIAID accused of collaboration with China on the coronavirus." Now, many people that have kept up with the story of the quote-unquote virus, you're bat soup crazy if you think that it came from bat soup. We know that there's elements regarding the situation that do deserve questioning. I am very glad that the guest post to the Gateway Pundit in this article by Colonel Lawrence Sellin, retired, also posted at the ccnationalsecurity.org, did a good overview of some of the connections regarding Fauci, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and also what we would call the EcoHealth Alliance that received grants from the federal government. So basically, we know, those of us that listen to InfoWars or just do our own independent research on various topics, that lead us to one resounding conclusion, that this quote-unquote virus, I call it an operation, yes, it came from Wuhan, and how ironic, it's in the same area near the BSL-4 lab, our Fort Detrick, basically, in Wuhan. Their bioweapons manufacturing facility, laboratory. And how ironic, the guy headed our Corona task force, not the vice president, but Dr. Fauci, the one that we're taking all these recommendations from, has some kind of tie, not just financially, but obviously within the research and development processes of this, or various corona bat viruses, or however they say it, coronaviruses that come from bats. So I'm gonna briefly go over this article. Nevertheless, I cut out a few clips. Some of these are highlighted in the article itself of, I believe it was the CEO or some chairman from the EcoHealth Alliance Incorporated, which is a 501c3, you'll find out. And just how they also are not only non-profit, but conservationalists. They're conservatories for wildlife. They study a lot of wildlife, hence why they go out and research bat viruses in China, southern China, and all around the world. And they work on vaccines to make these things better, just in case a pandemic was to break out. So real briefly, I'm gonna flip to this. Remember I mentioned about the Global Preparedness Board, wrong tab, I'll get it. They came out with a new release, a new annual report, and this one dropped September 14th, 2020. So a day after this article for investigating Fauci comes out, the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, which deals with global pandemics and all of this stuff and the preparedness of such vaccines and viruses, outbreaks, they released this one called A World in Disorder. Some of you guys may remember when I covered A World at Risk, that was released September 2019. I'm gonna cut to the chase and get to the point. I wanted to show you guys the cover of this though, up close. I got a picture in there. A World in Disorder. Now we know that the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board is financed by the World Bank and also the World Health Organization, which is connected to the United Nations. So you can see copywritten by the World Health Organization 2020. And we'll just go over this. That's the chairman. Back to this clip right here. And this is who's on the members, or, the members that's on the board. I've been over this before. But as you see, we have Dr. Chris Elias, who was also featured in the Event 201. And he is the president of the Global Development Program for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And right under him, we have Dr. Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, who's been there for over 40 years. Then under him, we have Dr. George F. Gao, Director General of the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention of the People's Republic of China, or I would say the Chinese Communist Party. So I wonder sometimes when they say the CDC has recommended, or these CDC recommendations are going out, are they talking about the Chinese Center for Controlled Diseases or Center for Disease Control and not the U.S. organization, or is there really even any separation? Moving forward, back to this article for investigation, or is it time for investigation? Colonel Sellen, retired, goes on to say, or begins, I should say, Americans are unaware of the extent of China's infiltration of U.S. medical research, the degree to which U.S. officials and scientists facilitated it, the possibly dangerous transfer of technology, including that related to the likely creation of the COVID-19 virus, and the continuation of such collaborative programs. Now, we know that in 2015, some of these experiments, if you listen to Dr. Francis Boyle, some of these research projects and experimental projects that Fauci and all of his people were working on were actually suspended and transferred to China because under the Bioweapons Treaty Act authored by Dr. Francis, such research and development is illegal in the United States. As you see, they've got massive funding, and their funding comes from many sources. So I'll start playing these clips throughout my presentation, and I'll interject the text as we go. But based on the preponderance of evidence, there is now little question that the virus that has caused the worldwide pandemic likely came from a laboratory in China. The question remains whether an accidental leak was a consequence of biological warfare experiments by the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese government collaborated with the World Health Organization to downplay the threat and make the case that the virus appeared to not be transmitted from human to human, but rather from animals, primarily bats, to humans. There is also the question of why China cut off all domestic flights between Wuhan, population of 11 million, and Beijing and Shanghai, but not between Wuhan and Europe and America. So just recently, I want to say, I cannot remember what day, September 27th, 26th, CDC came out and revised their assessment that coronavirus does not spread person to person, human to human. So they basically reversed their original statement, but yet while collaborating with the World Health Organization and the Chinese Communist Party, we were led to believe initially that there was no person-to-person spread. So I just wonder, why do we continue believing the CDC? It's like, oh, put the mask on, because even though it might not stop you from getting the virus or me getting the virus, it just makes people feel better when OSHA regulation says, yes, it is truly harmful. It reduces your oxygen levels. It has you breathing your own carbon monoxide or dioxide, one of the two. I'm on teleprompter free. Anyway, we can prove the science that it's harmful, but they cannot prove the science that it's helpful. I don't want to get stuck on the mask theory. It's just, like I say, there is a collaboration going on by this consortium of not just rogue elements within our government, but rogue elements all around the government in the name of health that are definitely up to something. And that's what these clips that I will play will show. And this article breaks down. I will leave it in the link, so I'm not the one reading this whole thing to you. There are some highlights that I wanted to break down, because when Trump says that we are fighting the invisible enemy and we are fighting against the China virus, it's not COVID-19, people. There's so much of an integrated faction between our health system, between our school system, between our governments. I mean, it's like Joe Biden says,
China is going to eat our lunch. Come on, man. They can't even figure out how to deal with the fact that they have this great division between the China Sea and the mountains in the west. They can't figure out how they're going to deal with the corruption that exists within the system. I mean, they're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not competition for us. But here's where we are. The U.S.-China relationship has also improved dramatically in the past 30 years. In order to cement this robust partnership, we have to go beyond close ties between Washington and Beijing, which we're working on every day. Go beyond it to include all levels of government. Go beyond it to include classrooms and laboratories, athletic fields, and boardrooms.
The China are not bad folks, and he wants to integrate them in all parts of our society. Well, unfortunately, that's happening. And the speaker the representative from EcoHealth Alliance has something very key that he says on how they bring about such drastic governmental changes, especially when governments are cooperative. Cooperative meaning supplying that money.
So one of the things we've been trying to do is we work a lot on the underlying causes of pandemics: deforestation, climate change, wildlife hunting. That's our conservation side as well. Mm-hmm. So we go to foundations and say, look, you've been trying to stop the wildlife trade in China for 20 years. You've put all this money into it. If you have a health angle to that, it really does work. Yeah. The markets, the wildlife markets in China were never closed down because of, ethical concerns or conservation. But the minute SARS emerged, they closed them down.
Right.
So that's the argument we use, and we're trying to put the health in conservation.
I see.
You can read it over for yourself. So we'll go into the meat of the article. It says, on April 27, 2020, it was reported that the National Institute of Health, presumably with the authorization of President Donald Trump, suspended spending on the remaining $369,819 of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases grant to the EcoHealth Alliance, a longtime scientific collaborator with Chinese scientists, in particular the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So right here, instantly, we have a connection with, Dr. Fauci. We haven't got to the Gates Foundation, but operations of research with the Chinese Center for Disease Control by way of this. Why do you say that? Because Fauci's organization was the one that was funding EcoHealth Alliance. EcoHealth Alliance collaborated with Chinese scientists and as their spokesperson or the CEO, I don't know what he is, really could care less. As he mentions in his videos, they're all over the world, at least 30 countries, but they're embedded within universities and operations. So if you recall, when the DOJ was arresting all of these laboratory professors in these universities, they was also working directly with the Wuhan Institution of Virology. So what I'm painting out today is not just that we're under attack and in a war. Like I say, this is the war zone. This podcast is called War Zone. You can get your news anywhere. You can listen to Infowars.com, Newswars.com, go to the Gateway Pundit, Zero Hedge. You can find all of this information somewhere on the net. What I want to present is looking a little deeper, getting the theory out of the way of the conspiracy. So what I'm trying to do is remove the theory of conspiracy and show you how these people have collaborated and connect these dots, because this is an act of war. And I can't wait around for everybody to come to that understanding. I have to tell people that no matter what you believe, no matter how you feel about the information that I'm relaying to you, I can give you a timeline and a trail of events that led up to such, but it all is stemmed from defunding. See, when Trump got in, what happened is he started taking away a lot of funding from these organizations. And I have articles that go back to 2017. Heck, we have Fauci on record saying that the president will definitely face a surprise pandemic.
There will be a surprise outbreak. Given, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been around for a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations, I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation, you will understand why history, the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID, will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with. So for those who think that infectious diseases is gone, there's so many people who've made foolhardy statements not knowing at the time that they made them. I usually show a quote from an old Surgeon General or an old pundit in infectious disease. So I thought I'd pull this one out from Sir MacFarlane Burnet, who was actually a Nobel Prize winning immunologist, who made the statement, as many did, to write about infectious diseases is almost to write of something that has passed into history. The most likely forecast about the future of infectious diseases is that it will be very dull, which is really kind of interesting coming from a semi-genius like MacFarlane Burnet. And I think what he did, and the mistake that so many people have made, is something that several of our panelists have already referred to. And that is a failure to look beyond our own borders in the issue of the globality of health issues. Not only things that are there that will come here, but surprises that we have. What are the lessons that we learned from HIV? One, you have to commit substantial financial and human resources. These things don't get addressed spontaneously by themselves. You have to enlist the best and the brightest investigators in both basic and clinical research. You have to involve the community, be it the gay community in the United States, or the community in Africa and West Africa when we dealt with Ebola, or the people in South America when we're dealing with Zika. You have to have cross-sector collaboration. You can't do it alone. The CDC can't do it alone. The NIH can't do it alone. You do it with all of us, with industry, with global organizations, with philanthropy and NGOs, and you gotta get the leaders and the policymakers involved. What is for sure, that no matter what, history has told us definitively that it will happen, because infectious diseases, as I said 8 years ago in this article with David Morans and Greg Folkers, that it is a perpetual challenge. It is not going to go away. So the thing we're extraordinarily confident about is that we are going to see this in the next few years. Thank you.
Well, anybody who says that is guaranteeing that it will not be a surprise. But the article is saying that, hey, Trump is doing the bad thing by defunding our health organizations. You know what I mean? Because they won't be prepared in case a pandemic breaks out. No, Trump got wise to the fact that you guys are using American taxpayer funds primarily to finance the destruction of America in the guise of a health pandemic, which they're doing. And the frustration is Trump can remove funding from the World Health Organization. Well, guess what, people? That takes about a year. Trump can say, hey, I'm going to stop this funding right now to EcoHealth Alliances Incorporated, because they have been known for a long time to work with Chinese scientists regarding only God knows what type of research, regarding only God knows what type of animals. what are you really making in that bioweapons laboratory? See, there's a difference. Dr. Fauci, as I showed you, is the head of the National Infectious Disease, whatever it is. He's the head of that. So why is he giving money to an organization that is working directly with a laboratory that is developing bioweapons for the Chinese Communist Party? But that's your tax dollar. That's your stuff. Okay. So it's like I say, you can read this all for yourself. So here are those facts. 10 days earlier, during a press briefing, by the coronavirus task force, the following exchange took place between a White House correspondent and the president. Question: U.S. intelligence is saying this week that the coronavirus likely came from a level 4 lab in Wuhan. There is also another report that the NIH under the Obama administration in 2015 gave the lab $3.7 million in a grant. Why would they give a grant like that to China? Great question. I wonder who asked it. President Trump. The Obama administration gave them a grant of $3.7 million. I have been hearing about that, and we've instructed that any grants that are going to that area, we're looking at it literally about an hour and a half ago, or an hour ago, and also early in the morning. We will end that grant very quickly, end quote. So Trump is well aware of what's going on, and I believe we got him red-handed. But the problem is we don't take the time to even look into these bigger factions. We could just say, oh, it came from a lab, or Fauci's involved. Well, how's Fauci involved? Fauci is involved because he directly approves a grant by way of the NIH to his organization that directly funds EcoHealth Alliance Incorporated, the recipient of many grants. Okay, let's cut to the clip.
How do you pay for all this? You have people give money, right?
Raise money, yeah. And another advantage of being a 501c3 is we have this history of being a charitable sort of conservation, saving wildlife organisation. So we've got all the major donors that support that. We've got the public that donate. We have a charity gala in New York every year. So we have all these sort of non-profit things we do, but over 80% of our funds comes from federal support. So we, like a university department, we're going after federal money all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Is it difficult to raise enough money for your needs?
Well, it's great when you get it. I don't know what. It's not easy, is it? I mean, it's pretty brutal, isn't it? I mean, if you look at your success rate on federal grants, I guess the average is 10% or something. So we're probably hitting above average. But it's just hard to spend so much time on a grant and then it gets rejected. It's upsetting.
I'm very aware of that because that's how we support our lab. It's getting harder because more and more people are coming in the field, which is good, but it's very competitive. And the money has not gone up sufficiently. The problem is when the money does go up, it doesn't matter because the universities grab it for making buildings.
We have an overhead, but of course, that's the other thing. You're a small organisation. Everyone knows where the overhead's going. There's no. You see the benefits of that because it goes right back to you. So that's another slight advantage.
Do you have support from, say, Gates Foundation?
No, we don't. We've never got Gates money, and I think that Gates had a strategy of specifically targeting things that they consider neglected, diseases that were neglected. We're working on what they consider not neglected diseases.
And we're back. So, as you see, and you heard from him himself, there's a lot of things that are questionable. We're paying for their research. So I wanted to continue where I was at. It says, quote, EcoHealth Alliance Incorporated is the recipient as grantee of an NIH grant entitled, quote, Understanding the Risk of Bat Coronavirus Emergence, end quote. It is our understanding that one of the sub-recipients on this grant is the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It is our understanding that Wuhan Institute of Virology studies the interaction between coronaviruses and bats. The scientific community believes that the coronavirus causing COVID-19 jumped from bats to humans, likely in Wuhan, where the COVID-19 pandemic began. I'll add this, just blocks away, the wet market is from the lab. Just a coincidence though. There are now allegations that the current crisis was precipitated by the release from Wuhan Institute of Virology of the coronavirus responsible for the COVID-19. Given these concerns, we are pursuing suspension of Wuhan Institute of Virology from participation in federal programs. So here's the actual letter that was sent to EcoHealth Alliance and basically saying we're not going to fund you anymore. Now, further in the article, it states that regardless of that cancellation of that grant or even having, the no dealings with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, period, somehow EcoHealth Alliance still received money from a grant. You know what I'm saying? The guy says it was canceled because the NIH was told to cancel it. I don't know the reason, but we were told to cancel it. Now that's Fauci. Let's run to him, say it for himself.
Okay, thank you very much. And I wanted to ask Dr. Fauci a quick question with my remaining time. Dr. Fauci, there was a grant that was a coronavirus-related grant that was not renewed, and I wanted to talk with you to make sure that we just get the facts straight about this, because I was really concerned about this. Do you know why this grant was canceled, or if anyone at the White House or HHS pressured your colleagues to do so? And specifically, I wanted to talk with you about the National Institutes of Health. There was a decision made by the Trump administration to cancel research on a grant that was specifically focused on coronavirus emergence while we're in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic. And it just didn't make any sense to me why this grant would be canceled.
The question you're asking, why was it canceled?
Yes. Why was this grant canceled when we're in the middle of this pandemic? It seems like it would have been very helpful for us to have this research, considering we know very little about COVID-19.
Okay. It was canceled because the NIH was told to cancel it.
And why were they told to cancel it?
I don't know the reason, but we were told to cancel it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions.
So we're back. It says, continuing with the article a little bit. Now, wasn't that interesting? He was looking at a screen because the coronavirus thing, somebody else was, at first when I was looking at it, I was like, man, he looks really demonic, but I realized he was focusing in on whoever was talking. Either way, he still looks out of it. But the answer is, dude, you lied, for one. For two, you know way more than you said. Because why? Who's EcoHealth Alliance? Dude, forget the grant. What are you guys really doing, and how long have you been doing it is the question. So the way that you have had world wars in the past is by bullets, bombs, and people dying, by way of those type of inflictions. Bullet wounds, gun wounds, bombs, doesn't matter. Well, in World War III, or you could say World War IV, because World War III was the war on drugs, regardless, sidebar. But so we're in World War IV. It's surrounded by health. Now I'm gonna put this out there. Don't you find it strange that one of Obama's momentous acts is the creation of what? I'm going to call it the Affordable Care Act, universal health care, also dubbed Obamacare. What does this do? It removes the American system of healthcare, i.e., the old way of insurance, and it allows for the international brokerage of not just control, because that is the ultimate goal. It's not even power and control. It super exceeds the financial gain in this. But how else could they take over the world in one step? You can't do that, bombs and stuff like that. But keep in mind, this is a bioweapon manufacturing laboratory. So it's only natural that health would be the introduction to a bioweapon. So regardless of what you feel about Obama, I don't find it unusual that the thing that he did to not make Americans free was force this tax, i.e. the healthcare tax, which Trump removed the mandate. But the point of it is this: you tie us all in together. So that means the government is involved in your life from birth to death, when America was built on the totally opposite principle. So if the government's in your life from life to death, and now they're telling you in order to work, travel, buy, sell, or trade, you're going to have to be vaccinated, or you're going to have this COVID pass, or you're going to have to put your mask on. No, that's not America, man. America is the land of the free. But now we're walking around like fleas, with ticks, meaning we're the virus that needs to be exterminated. Who's that? No, if you think your freedom is priceless, then you better be ready to die for it, because that will be the ultimate cost of what it is to be free. They're telling you right now, yeah, the vaccine is not going to do you any good, but you're going to need to take it if you want to enter this building. If you want to work at this job, I'm going to see your proof of vaccination. And that's basically what did they say? The certificate of vaccination identification. COVID. That's messed up, right? So I'll just let these clips play out, but I wanted to highlight this part. Despite that continuing controversy, on August 27th, so we're just talking about a couple months ago, on August 27, 2020, the day that Donald Trump was preparing to accept his party's nomination for a second term as president of the United States, the NIH quietly and unceremoniously announced that the EcoHealth Alliance would receive $7.5 million as part of an $82 million program to create a global network of 10 centers for research in emerging infectious disease, CREED. Leading this effort is Dr. Fauci, a member of the White House Corona Task Force and a frequent sparring partner with the president over how best to, quote, slow the spread of the virus. Remember, 2 weeks, sound like the Durham report. 2 weeks to stop the spread, 2 weeks to indict somebody, huh? No, if you would have did this earlier, look, I don't care. I know things like this take time, man. So long as we see some real American justice, I could care less how long it takes, but we're running out of time. So it is unclear what the precise basis for the cancellation of the earlier EcoHealth Alliance grant was, or how a new award over 20 times larger than the amount cut would be given to the EcoHealth Alliance, while the original controversy remains unsolved. Like I say, I really encourage you to go and look at this at yourself, look into this for yourself. I will put up some slides, and like I say, their main thing is funding, man. They're having trouble funding. So we'll go here to page 37, because I can't produce at the speed of news. But like I say, we're taking deep dives. If you want news, you can find that anywhere, man. Go to band.video for blockbuster reporting. Tune into the Titans of Liberty show if you really want your daily news update. But once again, all that gets mundane, man. We're in war. This is a war. You need to know that information is not just your ammo. It's your survival tool. You know what I mean? So what does it say? This is in the 2020 version of their Global Preparedness Monitoring Board annual report. It says, we call for strong and agile national and global systems for global health security. Heads of government strengthen national systems for preparedness, identifying, predicting, and detecting the emergence of pathogens with pandemic potential based on a, quote, One Health universal approach that integrates animal and human health, building core public health capacities and workforce for surveillance, early detection, and sharing of information on outbreaks and similar events, strengthening health systems based on universal health coverage with surge capacity for clinical and supportive services, and putting in place systems of social protection to safeguard the vulnerable, leaving no one behind. Isn't that so nice and so loving? Oh, you care about me. It's so liberal. So liberal. Stay out my body, man. You know what I mean? Stay out my body. Keep yourself on that side. But as you see some of these same talking points. One Health, like I say, universal. The emergence of pathogens with pandemic potential. Hence why they're always testing. Cases are rising. Well, there's over 100 coronaviruses out there, man, that we know of. You know, it's SARS-CoV or SARS-CoV-2 or whatever is the base of all of this crap. And like I say, you're bat soup crazy if you believe that this came from a wet market in bat soup. So, moving on. Researchers, research institutions, research funders, the private sector, governments, the World Health Organization, and international organizations. By the way, these are urgent actions. So we defeat them by knowing what their plans are and resisting. This is America, man. We have the Bill of Rights. We have the Constitution. Wherever you're at, your state, your commonwealth has a constitution. They're all unified under the United States Constitution. Your officers, your elected officials, all these people take an oath to uphold, defend, protect, and carry out the duties of the Constitution. So the moment that they go contrary to this in the name of One Health, in the name of keeping me alive, at the same time killing babies, because guess who hasn't had to shut down? Planned Parenthood hasn't shut down not one day. None of their workers ever missed a day. And guess what? None of those babies ever seen life either. So how do you feel about that? You be like, oh, circumstances, woman, blah, blah, blah. Hey, if you ever want to have that conversation with me, I have it with you. But this is how this is the only reason I'm bringing it up. It's hard for me to believe that the people who kill babies while everything else has to be shut down and they kept that open wants to keep me alive. That is contradictory to their whole business model. You want me dead. It's really simple, because if you wanted me to be alive in the name of protecting my health, you wouldn't have me wearing a mask. You would have told me about boosting my immune system a lot earlier. You know what I mean? You would still tell people about quinine water. Funny thing is, I seen an advertisement from the 1950s regarding Canada Dry, and they were selling quinine water. You know what I mean? It was during the Ozzie and Harriet show. It was so much a throwback. Like, wow, I got it on my phone. I'll play it one day maybe. But the fact that they're advertising quinine back then, why? Because it was smart. Just like they used to have iodine in your bread, iodine in the salt, iodine in the toothpaste. Iodine is key to the development of your pineal gland and so many other things. That's why a lot of people have thyroid problems. Here's the problem, and I want you to get this, and I want you to get it real good. Most people know this. It's the health care system. They're not trying to cure anything, but what I would like to call it is the health creation system. They create situations that complicate your health, and they never tell you about the holistic things, mainly diet. Your diet is key. I'm not for universal health care, but I'll tell you what, I'm for universal dental. I believe that everybody should have free dental. I know all the dentists and dentist techs will get mad. They make a lot of money, but they also do good charitable work. Now, my point is this. Most health problems come from your teeth and how you take care of your teeth and the proper development of your teeth. Your arteries, clogged arteries, all of these things are relate back to your mouth. Your mouth health is the most important thing. What goes in, what goes out. What do they say? You are what you eat. That is more than a cliche. So proper education on diet is key. We've already been pretty long. I do have a couple more charts of graphs that I'll put up. Like I say, I'm gonna put this in the link as well. Progress on 2019 Global Preparedness Monitoring Board Call to Action. I mean, it's very interesting because now we're in it, guys. You know what I mean? Now we're in it, and they are definitely. This is a chart I wanted to bring up. I'll highlight it. But so this is on page 34, and it's talking about the absence of a pre-established multilateral agreement or mechanism to share limited countermeasures in is threatening to prolong the pandemic. So it goes out through all this talking about the vaccine. So it says the COVID vaccine. Yeah, COVID-19 Global Vaccine Access, COVAX. So they already got an acronym for it. They already got it in place. They already got their code name. You know what I mean? COVAX. That's so crazy, man. Excuse me. Starting over. Right here is where I'm at, guys. Sorry. Yeah, we'll just read all that, and then I cut to the chase and let you guys get to it. Hopefully you got something out of this. Think for yourself. Research for yourself, man. This is 52 pages. It's boring. The article's rather lengthy. It's boring. But guess what? This is information that we need to not just take back our country, but make sure that these traitors and infiltrators get the justice, that American justice that they deserve. That's written out in the United States Code. See, the Code of Federal Regulations is for all these unelected people, man. They got a code that they have to stick to, but they're so unethical that the only way that they won't get prosecuted for their crimes, because they've been doing it for so long and they're so dug in, is to implode the system. And that's where we're at. Welcome to World War IV. It's a health crisis. It's a global pandemic. And if you don't wake up and say this is all theater, now that does not mean that these crazy mad scientists, obviously Dexter's laboratory crap, they're working on these deadly vaccines, or not just deadly vaccines, where we know you get this vaccine, you're going to be more harmed than if you would have just let your immune system take care of it. Now, with that said, they're going to harm you, but with such a one health, one world, one order approach, they're ready for the takeover of the machines. They have military minds now that really don't care about your constitution, don't care about you or your prosperity, don't care about your 401k, don't care about your stock. They want to implode the whole system. They're not playing when they say death to America. So I'll start this out, and then we'll zoom in on this graph. The COVID-19 Global Vaccine Access Facility will allow countries to pool resources, share vaccine development risk, allow procurement of sufficient volumes of vaccines to support equitable access globally, and where there is oversupply, donate surplus doses to a central pool. Now, we're going to stop there, and hence why everybody gets on Trump saying, oh man, he's all pro-vaccine now, and he's saying the vaccine. Well, you got to also remember, he said if they want it. But this is the reason why he basically tapped the military to produce over 500 million vaccines, because those resources will be that much more limited or in limited access if he says, nope, we're going to take priority over all the vials, over all the containers, over all the needles. We need that, and we're buying that for the US citizens, you know what I mean? And not only that, but we're going to have it over here. Now, that doesn't mean that these people don't have their own labs, can't create their labs overnight, saying that they have stuff dug down in China, but it takes away a large chunk of their funding and a large chunk of what they already had in place. So when you read this new annual report from the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, you'll see where basically Trump has, man, it's such a genius move, you know, and people are worried about, oh, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. Hey, this is a war. In a war, you can't make a non-strategic move. So he's moving in such a strategic fashion that you don't even know we're in the war. Fauci knows we're in the war. He's calling up his resources. China knows we're in the war. Trump knows we're in the war. Pompeo knows we're in the war. We, the average citizen, don't understand the global calamity that we truly are facing. Now, whether Trump's good or bad, it's yet to be seen, but I know he's doing a lot of things, and he might just be the only thing that's in our way, although there's a lot of things that I question. So let's zoom into this chart. Pledged doses of University of Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Remember, AstraZeneca is one of the final three regarding the release of this vaccine. We can see over here the countries that's pledged doses in millions and percent of total. Australia. You see the process that they're going through. snatching their citizens out their house for social media posts. Countries with bilateral deals with AstraZeneca. See that? The worldwide, man. So you wonder why is it a world war? Well, it's a world war in the name of health. So keep that in mind. Retain the videos and stay safe. Stay blessed. Stay prayed up. If you don't know the Lord, just ask him to come into your heart. Ask for forgiveness of all your ways, anything that you ever felt conviction of. Even if you don't know, just call out to Jesus, Yeshua, Yahweh, jealous. Kana is the Hebrew for jealous. For our God is a jealous God whose name is jealous, capital J in the text, but Kana in the Hebrew Bible. So we're at war, people. Wake up. Back to the article. Still some more there. Where he breaks down, their works with China. Wake up and wake somebody else up. Stay safe. Peace and blessings.
So give me an overview. You said you have labs throughout the world that you work with. They're not employees of yours, though? You contract them, or some of them are?
Usually we subcontract to labs, but we usually try and have, in every country, a country program officer who manages the work we do in a country, sometimes regional. And we often hire technicians in labs or PhD students, to have a presence in the lab. There's more of a buy-in when you've got a person there.
Okay. And in these remote locations, like John Epstein, for example, is at this meeting and is involved in surveillance. He's mostly in New York, but he'll go to field sites periodically and do work as well. Do you do that? Do you go out in the field?
Yeah, I still do. I have two countries that I still kind of am in charge of in the organization: China and Malaysia.
Okay.
I've got a long-term history of working in Malaysia. So does John. So I go out there a heck of a lot.
Right. Okay. So the point is to establish capabilities in other countries, not just take specimens from them and bring them home, right?
That's right. That's the strategy. And, it's the old adage that if you teach people how to do it and give them the capacity and the tools, then you've really made a difference. And the money always dries up. And this is something we've seen in the non-profit world. You get great funding for 5 years from a foundation. They always shift priorities because that's what they've got to do. They've got to keep it fresh.
Sure.
So if you've built a structure and trained people, they're in their own country raising money locally. You've left it. That's the alliance part of what.
Okay. How many countries would you say you're in?
Right now, it's probably about 30 countries. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the programs. I was perusing EcoHealthAlliance.org. Probably when it started, there were no websites, but now everyone can see it.
That's right.
So let's talk about a few of these. They're really interesting. And then not all of them have to do with viruses, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Some of them do, some of them have to do with other things. So there's one about establishing biosurveillance networks in Western Asia.
Oh, WabiNet.
And you have nice acronyms for all of these.
Everything's got an acronym.
WabiNet. Why Western Asia? Which is about where we are, right?
No, Western Asia is very specifically sort of the stands, Pakistan, Kyrgyzstan, all these places. They're countries that need support, so they get a lot of US development money.
Got it.
They're countries at a security risk, so there's interest from DoD. And I think the funding for that comes from DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency.
Right.
And the idea is you're training scientists to do good work and learn how to live and function within the modern science community.
Are there any particular threats that you're interested in that region?
Oh, there's a lot of pretty unpleasant pathogens out there. Plague is still out there. No one's really done deep surveys of bats out there and the viruses they carry. We expect they're going to carry similar viruses to Hendra, Nipah, SARS and others. So that's what we're looking at in that.
So that's something you'd want to do, survey bats? Yeah. Okay. And then there's the Western Asia Bat Research
Network. Okay.
That's that one, right?
Yeah.
That's got an acronym too. WABAR, I think. And so it's also Western Asia looking for viruses in bats. And then there's another program for Rift Valley fever. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, Rift is, I think people talk a lot about One Health. Rift is a classic One Health disease. It's a human, wildlife, and livestock disease. And, we think we know a lot about these things. I mean, I'm always fascinated. You talk about, should we do some work on Rift a few years ago? Well, no, everything's known. People know what's going on. There's predictive models that show when you should move the vaccine supply to prevent outbreaks. So as good as it gets, there's a vaccine. But it turns out there are huge gaps. For instance, there are these very long gaps between outbreaks, sometimes 10 years, more than 10 years. The virus is out there, and the mantra is that it's in mosquito eggs and dried out dambos. And then when it floods, they pop up and out comes the virus. It turns out there's actually some evidence of cycling in wildlife, wild antelopes and others. So we're looking at that and trying to say whole systems approach, a real One Health approach. What's going on in wildlife, and does that allow the virus to cause risk to farmers, even outside of those outbreaks?
Right. So you're sampling wildlife and looking for the virus.
Yeah, sampling wildlife, sheep, people, mosquitoes, soil, the whole gamut.
So currently they vaccinate cows, right? Cattle.
Yeah, and sheep,
And sheep, but that doesn't prevent the virus from circulating in wildlife.
That's right. It's in ungulates, and they're out there in the wild.
So if you find virus out there, what do you do about that? You can immunize the cattle, but what about people?
What we're doing is we're working with farmers, and the target audience, and it's in South Africa, so the target audience is sheep farmers who care about losing sheep. The ultimate bigger picture is pandemic risk and movement of the virus into, bigger areas. So we're working with farmers to say, can we predict better when to vaccinate? Is it, it's not always just once every few years. It might be once a herd immunity drops below a certain threshold, virus is going to come from the wild ungulates into the flock. So that's the target.
So currently this is an African disease. Yeah. And I think you mentioned on your website, people worry about it spreading elsewhere, right? Is that realistic?
Because one of the things about Rift is it once it gets into livestock, it can then be transmitted directly from blood and meat into people. So it becomes a huge risk for people butchering animals. And the big event is the Hajj, where everybody has to butcher and eat a sheep, lamb, whatever. Right. So there's this high risk around the Hajj. CDC's aware of it, WHO's aware of it, and they monitor. And Saudi Arabia does a great job monitoring the Hajj. But what about these other areas, these other regions, and these other risks? Okay. It's definitely a pandemic risk for sure.
Could it get into the U.S. even?
Yeah, through meat or
meat
through
coming in. Yeah. Now it's mosquito transmitted, you said?
Yeah.
What kind of mosquitoes?
Okay.
Or do we have them here in the U.S.?
We have some here in the U.S., so there's a possibility of that too. Yeah, but I'm not a mosquito expert.
You worry about, what is it, African swine fever?
Yeah, well, we've been working in China for many years, and China's took a huge hit from African swine fever right now. And the price of pork's gone up. That's a big issue. They're the biggest consumer of pork on the planet, biggest producer.
Right.
They're importing US pork, so that's good for US producers, but it's just not good for the planet. And you think about other countries in the region that are less biosecure than China, it's a threat to everywhere.
Do you have people in China working on this?
We've been working in China for years, but not on African swine fever. We actually discovered another disease in pigs, swine acute diarrheal syndrome that emerged. SADS, yeah, good acronym. That emerged out of bats, and the capacity for these viruses to pop up seemingly out of nowhere and cause 25,000 pig deaths, and for that to go unnoticed for a long time is incredible. And when you think about the huge production of pork in China, diseases that look like another disease, it's a diarrheal disease, looks like a PD and PDV, can just get missed, and that's the worrying part.
Right. Now in all these places we're talking about, you have people who are supported by you, they're paid by you, and they're working locally, and you periodically interact with them and see and provide advice? And do they
periodically is every day?
Every day.
Yeah.
So they don't mind that. They appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so it's like, it depends who they are. I mean, look, we have our staff in countries funded directly. We have subcontracts through local universities or agencies in country, and then we have contracts to do work. And we it's all collaborative science. So people love to interact on collaborative science. What I've found, especially in places like China, where increasingly there's a paranoia around collaboration. Science collaboration is open and transparent because of the nature of what you're trying to do. You're trying to discover stuff quickly, understand what it means, publish it in a high impact journal, and that drives openness and transparency. And that's been great for us around the world. It's also great for the US, and we really need to push that agenda, I think.
Yeah, publishing is a very interesting mechanism. You have to publish, and by then when you publish, everyone has it to use.
It's kind of unusual, right?
It's called, I spoke to an economist recently, she said it's making a public good out of science, because if you don't publish it, you're not recognized.
And also the business model of science is weird as well, because I'll never forget, the first time I published a paper, my brother, he's an opera singer, came to visit me and he said, "Wow, look at this, your name's on a paper. Cool, how much did they pay you for this?" I said, "Well, nothing."
Right.
In fact, we had to pay the page fees.
So here's a couple of others I noticed. Predict.
Yeah.
That's an acronym. What does that do?
It's not an acronym. It's a capitalized non-acronym.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That tells you what you're doing.
That wasn't our name. That was USAID that came up. They came up with a whole gamut of programs in their emerging pandemic threats program. Predict, respond, prepare, prevent. There's also a little bit pretentious. But Predict, it's a great project. It's just finished, sadly. But 10 years of surveillance in wildlife, viral discovery, finding new pathogens, surveillance in people, trying to find evidence of those new pathogens spilling over, trying to identify where the high-risk human, wildlife, livestock interfaces are on the planet, and really, ultimately, get better at predicting where the next pandemic's going to come from. So as you look at the value of the crops they produce, but then there's this other thing that's never been done, which is you get a new disease that emerges, can have incredible impact economically, like SARS, $10 to $50 billion of impact. In Malaysia, zoonotic malaria tracks really closely with land use change. So we went to Malaysia, we calculated the cost of every case of malaria. We put that into the equation for ecosystem services and show that palm oil production specifically loses profit because you're paying for malaria. You cut the forest down, you pay for malaria cases and control for another 100 years.
Sure.
So there's a loss that's unaccounted for. And we're trying to show the government, this is costing you money, so don't be so gung-ho about chopping all your forests down.
Yeah, that's the same idea you said earlier. You close the meat markets, giving them economic, health-based reasons, right? Another one is global wildlife trade.
Yeah.
What are you doing there?
Well, we're trying to look at patterns of wildlife trade that include a risk of new diseases emerging. So we're doing a couple of things really. So one is around SARS. We focused on SARS coronavirus emerged from a wildlife market and was the first pandemic of this century. So it's a big event. So we started to trace back from the wildlife market which species carried the virus that came into those markets. We found that it was bats, not civets was the original idea.
Right.
So then we started looking, where did they come from? And we went out to southern China and did surveillance of bats across southern China. And we've now found, after 6 or 7 years of doing this, over 100 new SARS-related coronaviruses, very close to SARS. Some of them get into human cells in the lab. Some of them can cause SARS disease in humanized mouse models and are treatable with therapeutic monoclonals, and you can't vaccinate against them with the vaccine. So these are a clear and present danger.
Yeah.
We've even found people with antibodies in Yunnan to SARS-related coronaviruses, so there's human exposure.
Right.
We're now doing surveillance. We're just beginning another 5 years of work to look at cohorts in southern China to say, well, how frequent does this spillover happen, and is it associated with disease? Because I expect, just like Nipah in Bangladesh, there are dozens and dozens of small spillovers going on the planet at any one time, which we just never see.
Sure. Yeah, they never amplify. There are a few cases and they're just absorbed in the illness, the overall illness of the population, right?
Now you could say, so who cares? And that's one argument, but our strategy is any one of those could become pandemic. There's a lot of stochasticity in what happens then.
Yeah.
So if we look at all of them, understand patterns, try and reduce the number of spillover events, we've got,
But if you're saying these are diverse coronaviruses and you can't vaccinate against them, there are no antivirals, what do we do?
Well, so I think that coronaviruses are pretty good. I mean, you're a virologist, you know all this stuff, but you can manipulate them in the lab pretty easily. It's just spike protein drives a lot of what happens with the coronavirus, zoonotic risk. So you can get the sequence, you can build the protein, and we work with Ralph Barrick at UNC to do this. Insert it into a backbone of another virus, and do some work in the lab. So you can get more predictive when you find a sequence. You've got this diversity. Now, the logical progression for vaccines is if you're going to develop a vaccine for SARS, people are going to use pandemic SARS as
sure.
But let's try and insert some of these other related and get a better vaccine.
And I guess also knowledge of what's there. If you see something emerging, it give it a head start on making a vaccine or a therapeutic.
That's true, and better knowledge of where they are as well, so that you can put your money into these clinics that matter. And that's one of the big things that we've been trying to push. There's a lot of the word predict, or the word anticipating, forecasting pandemics. It doesn't mean you can stop them. That's the problem. So what we're trying to do is say, on a global scale, if we can show where they're most likely to come from, the species they're most likely to originate in, the people most likely to get affected, a global actor like WHO or a national government can better allocate resources to the highest risk. It's pretty simple.
So you're doing a lot of activities. Those are just a few of all the ones you can find. How do you know if you're getting results? I know you publish things, right? Yeah. Are there any other metrics you use?
Yeah, well, you're very good at asking the right questions there, because we're doing our strategic plan right now, and our board has said to us, you need to monitor and evaluate better, and it's true. It's notoriously hard to monitor conservation success, and I think this is a similar problem. You've got near-term indicators, like number of people you've trained in villages. We designed these books called Living Safer with Bats, Living Safer with Wildlife, translate them into 20-odd different languages. And we educate folks in villages on these high-risk interfaces how to avoid spillover, basically. So near-term indicator, how many people have you taught in community outreach? But the real indicators are, have you prevented infections? Or have you had a policy change in a government that reduces risk? And we've done that. I mean, it takes a few years, but we have. We got the amphibian disease chytridiomycosis listed as a notifiable disease with OIE. We've got, the Sabah government is blocking building into road building into some of these forests based on the health side. So there is success, but it takes a long time.
So you talked about these books, Living
Safely with Bats.
Can people get those somewhere?
I think you get them on our website. Yeah,
okay.
Sure. Download
Take a look.
Whatever language you.
All right. This is one last question, which has to do with Linfa Wang.
Oh yeah.
Do bats have more viruses than other animals?
Very good question, sir. I've got to say, with Linfa, I stand corrected on this. I don't know. I think last time I met you, we were debating that publicly. Every speech we give at a conference, I would say, put my hand up, Linfa, you've still not shown that bats have more viruses than any other group. Now, he never showed it. It was us that showed it. I challenged him, and Kevin Oliver, who works for us, spent 8 years on a project trying to look at patterns of spillover from ICTV data, super complicated, huge amount of work, and correcting for the biases in the literature. And Linfa was right, and we were sorely gutted. Okay. But
he said that at ASV this summer. He said
he's right.
He was right, but I just wanted to check it with you.
No, he was correct. I was wrong.
Okay. Are you having fun, by the way?
I love it. Yeah, I love this work. It's I guess you go back to your childhood dreams of being a zoologist in the Amazon. I'm not a zoologist in the Amazon, but I think that once you get hooked on research and finding new things out, there's something that plays to a fundamental need to discover in the human psyche, and it's great every day. And even when it's wrong, even when you find out that your analysis shows it's not a big deal after all. It's still.
I love it. I think what you're doing is fabulous.
Thanks, I appreciate
it. And keep it up.
Cheers.